Okay, I don't know where we left off on the recording.
76. We were arguing about percentage.
But we left off talking about the percentage of time that Jesus spent with his disciples. And we're going to go 76.2 to 80% of Jesus' time was spent with his disciples. So when you graph that, how does that look? I feel like that's pretty good.
Looks like 5 minutes.
That looks like 90-10.
Oh, okay, hold on.
Yeah.
Is that better? Is that better?
80-20.
Three quarters.
Boom. So, if this is the amount of time that Jesus spent with his disciples, and in that amount of time, he was doing things like praying with them, praying for them, listening to them, having real and honest conversations with them. He loved them. He was bringing them back to him. He spent time in proximity. He was close to them. He taught them. He cared about their personal problems. He gave them a responsibility. He corrected and rebuked them. He lived in relationship with them. He trusted them. He challenged them. He ate with them. He traveled with them.
Just thought of a word that's not up there. He served them.
He served them. That's good.
That's the top answer.
Man, look. Jesus.
Oh, that was good. That
That's my Sunday school answer.
Mike for the win. That was good. So what does it look like? I want to give you guys a second to just personally reflect. What percentage of time do you intentionally spend, or do you intentionally invest in making disciples of Jesus in your life? What percentage of time do you invest in making disciples of Jesus? Let me give you a little clue. What does it look like for those of you that are parents to be parents? Are you intentionally making disciples of your children? Small group leaders, how much are you intentionally discipling the students in your small group? In your workplaces, are you intentionally discipling or caring for, spending time in proximity with, having real, honest, intentional conversations, carrying conversations with your coworkers? So take a second and just personally reflect and fill in that pie chart, that circle for you. What does it look like for you in your life as you make disciples? What percentage of your life would that be?
Are we talking about awake hours?
Awake hours, yes, ma'am. In your active daily life.
These kids are sharp.
I
Those are
remember
all not gonna work.
here's some extra ones.
Those, yeah.
There. I remember whenever I took a DS1, I was part of a DS1, which is a discipleship training that we do. And I had to personally reflect and ask that question to myself. And for me, the key word was, how intentional am I? Right? Yeah, I got relationships with lots of people, and I'm encouraging people all day long, and I'm around people. I go to students' games and recitals and the things, and I'll have lunch with small group leaders, and there's a difference when you consider what does it mean to be intentional, to know that this person is at point A, and I want to watch them and help them grow to point B. What is it going to take? What does that path look like? And how do I encourage and help them move along for us, move along the wheel spiritually to go from being an infant to a child to a young adult to a parent? Like, how do I help them grow in their spiritual maturity? You can live life all day long, but are you living it intentionally? That for me, and I think now, honestly, now that I turned 35, and that was really like a weird, like hard age for me to turn, because I began to ask myself, am I living with purpose? Am I living intentionally, or am I just letting the days happen? But y'all, like when we are intentionally making disciples, things change. And not only did things change, but we actually see them change. We see the growth in our students. We recognize it, and we get to celebrate it. So now we're gonna move to this question. It's one of my favorite questions. Is what can you do to shepherd the students in your group? What can you do to intentionally invest in the students in your group? You can use Jesus' list as a cheat sheet, right? He lived in a different time than we do, but what can we do to intentionally invest in our students and disciple our students?
Spend time with them.
Spend time.
I think time and proximity are always the key, but I also know that when you're doing that, you have to be intentional. So listening to them will help you locate them, and then you'll be able to shepherd out of that. So
Yes.
always just think about time and proximity, and be a good listener. If you do that well, then everything else can kind of fall into place.
Does that have two L's?
Sure.
I knew it.
Not many.
No, it doesn't.
No?
Oh, wait.
Yes,
Yeah, no.
we does.
To know.
We does,
So
yeah.
there's
Does it have an A or an E?
Intention.
I feel like an A.
Listening intentional, I didn't
It's a hard word. So listening intentionally,
Being interested in what they're interested in.
being interested, be interested. In their world. That's all.
And I do think being able to be honest with them, like sometimes I think you could start, especially in middle school, saying like, what do you think about that choice? Is that a wise choice? I mean, honest and real with them, because they can spot fake
Oh, yeah.
better than anybody else. Yeah.
Yeah, and one of the things you're gonna notice about this generation that we're moving into, Generation Z, I believe, they are more and more hungry for real and honest and authentic. They don't need the light show. They don't need anything fancy. They want you to be you because they can sniff out fake in an instant. They were born into a world that is so Instagram perfect, and they recognize that. You don't have to tell them that what you see on Instagram isn't always real. You don't have to tell them that that's the highlight reel of someone's life. They are fully aware of it. So when they have time with you and with their friends, y'all, they just want you to be real and honest. And they don't need a show. And I'm so thankful for that.
Yeah.
Right? Like, that's the beautiful thing about the generation that we're working with. What else? What else can you do?
I think not just being interested in their world, but being involved in their world, like going to see them play a sport, or if they have a recital or something like that, that
Yes.
if you can, you know.
Yes, be involved in their world. It is huge. Where Abby, where you at? Was it you that made the Google sheet, the Google Doc?
Yes.
Okay, Abby made a Google Doc and said, hey girls, your games, your events, whatever, like, put that information in this so that way, like, I don't know, Abby, did any of them do that?
No, but I added it to my own Google Doc, like I did it, they
I was
sent
gonna say,
them
if they
in
did.
text.
Okay,
They didn't like necessarily use that link.
Okay.
But I ended up compiling it on my own.
Yeah.
But they do send me their schedules, and if they don't, I ask them.
yes. Perfect. Yeah, that's a really big deal. Showing up, one of the things that we recognize in student ministry is that the more you are willing to step into their world, the more they will be willing to step into your world. It is one of my favorite things to do, to go to games and like sporting events, recitals, plays, like all of that. Y'all, there's some days, you'll catch me 3 days a week at a game. So just cause that's the season of life I'm in, and Jeremy and I can do that, right? Like, but and the nachos. It's the nachos and the popcorn that really drive it home. But y'all, that you stepping into their world is a really big deal. The care that they feel, your presence there, regardless if they say hello to you or not, you make them feel so special when you're there. One of the things I also recognized this last week, went to a game, a couple volleyball games, and it hit me. I don't know why it took this long. It was also a ministry to their parents. Because as I was sitting in the stands, I got to sit with parents. I got to say hello to families. And I've actually gotten to go and I've met parents at games, at competitions that I've never met before. So you talk about connecting with the whole family, connecting with the parents. Great, like natural way to meet parents. Go to a game. What else can we do?
Give them responsibility.
Give them responsibility. My red mark is dying. How can we give them responsibility, Chase?
Like, if they, if it's a Wednesday night and they're, in high school, they're in their home groups, say, hey, you have the story next week.
Mm-hmm.
Or, say, pick one kid out of the crowd and say, hey, you pray for us to go into group, pray for us to come out of the group.
Yeah. Junior high groups. Do you think your students could also share the story? Do you think your students could also pray? Yeah.
And I even tell them, like, I was not a believer, like, I accepted Christ at like 17, but I was not discipled, so I felt like it was stunted, so I didn't learn how to pray. So when I was an adult, that's when I had to pray. And I told them I'd practice, like I'd practice in front of the, like what I was gonna say, just in case. I feel like those are things that make it okay, so you practice praying before, because sometimes I needed to know the confidence in it, to let the freedom come later, and sometimes just equipping them that it's okay to have a set prayer that you're gonna pray in, because after time, that set prayer will become not so formal.
Yeah, that's good. That's really good. What else can we do?
They need to see your relationship with God. How is the relationship with God? And it needs to be real, but they're hungry. So, yes, friendship is super important, but really we need to point them to a friendship with God.
That's good. That's good.
Praise their achievements.
Praise their achievements.
Bring them into your world, so even though it's getting into theirs, but also bring them back to yours. Even if it is throwing a couple pallets of sod in your front yard and then feeding them pizza and letting them go on a bike right after.
Yes.
It was. And it's also.
Who really won?
Rusty, I think that you won that one. Yes. Yeah. But it's interesting what you're able to model in that. Yeah, it's cool. You got some free labor for your yard, but what you got to model with them in that, you got to have conversations. But maybe, just maybe, your students got to see, those boys got to see what it looks like to be surrounded by a family that loves the Lord. What does it look like to have two parents in a home? Like, when you get to invite your students into your world, you may actually be changing their world, because they get to see something that they may not have. And
Exactly why I did it.
We have a big project in the backyard.
totally.
We want to change lives.
Y'all come check out that pool.
Next weekend.
Rusty's gonna be changing some world right here.
One
So good. That's so good. You have the ability to model what Jesus modeled. I don't know if you see how much these lists duplicate each other, how much they mirror each other. We may live in a different time than Jesus lived in, but we still have an opportunity to care for and intentionally disciple the way that Jesus discipled. So don't ever be afraid to reach out to each other, especially junior high small group leaders. Reach out to these y'all, we are one big team, we are one big family, and we are rooting each other on. And so as you encounter different stuff and you're like, hey, like what was really fun for y'all to do, or what hangouts worked, or when you encounter this in your group, like don't be afraid to get with other group leaders and brainstorm the things that y'all could do, the simplicity of what does it look like for your group to have fun together, for you guys to make time for each other. We are each other's resources, and that's why I wanted to spend time, like, hey, let's brainstorm, let's popcorn, because the best ideas are not from the people up here, they're from a collective voice. So thank you guys for being willing to be so involved this morning. I knew it wouldn't be an issue though. Now we're gonna move on to the second, or the back of your first sheet. Y'all, essentially there are 4 key shepherding roles. There are 4 key shepherding roles. The first one is know. The first one is to know, to relate personally. Learn about your students. Share your life with your students. Allow them to share their life with you. One of the big caveats, though, that we have to mention is that this student small group is for the students. This student small group is not your adult small group. So we have to respect and be careful as their adult leaders. Sometimes we in life walk through things that they are not prepared to hear, that they are not prepared or able to, at their age, really fully wrestle with and digest. Those types of things we share with our adult small group. We lean into our adult small group to care for us in those ways. And we allow this small group to be one that we are truly shepherding and caring for. So you are supporting this small group. They are not supporting you. Allow your adult small group to really support you. The second thing that we do is, as a shepherd, is we feed. We teach truth, we inspire towards Jesus, and we care for their needs. We feed our students. And we're able to feed them because we know them, right? You can feed them because you know them. So you're gonna point your students toward truth in scripture and not toward your opinion. When a student comes to you with something that is weighing heavily on them, instead of just giving them your opinion, you can always ask, do you know what scripture says about that? Why don't we find out? Let's look. Point them toward truth and not just your opinion. Help your students search scripture for answers that hold like the foundation of their faith. The third thing that we do as a shepherd is we lead. We lead. That means that we invest sacrificially and we guide by the Spirit. Sometimes leading is not easy because sometimes sheep don't always go, like, you know, you have some that like to wander off. They don't always go where you want them to go. But, like, come on, right?
Well, don't they have dogs that like turn up birds? Yeah.
Y'all, that's why you got co-leaders. Like, you can each, like, you just flank the group, right? But you remember, you do your part. You do your part. You let God do his part. And it's up to the student to do their part. You be faithful in doing your part. Do not do God's part. Allow God to do his part, right? He is faithful and he is trustworthy. So we lean in, we trust the Lord. So in your conversations and your interactions, don't always feel like you have to be scripted and know all the things. It is okay for you as a leader to authentically say, that is a really good question. Let's seek the Lord in that. You know what? I don't know the answer to your question. Can I get back to you with that? Let me go search scripture. Let me go do some research. Let me go do some work. Let me wrestle with that. It's okay for you as a leader to say, I don't know. But let me hunt it down, you know? The fourth thing that you do as a shepherd is you protect. You protect. You display compassion, you protect the environment, and you comfort with the hope of the gospel. You protect them. As a shepherd to these students, you show kindness and care. And you create an environment that allows our students to feel heard and seen and valued and accepted. And one of the ways that we actually do that is by utilizing and putting in place the small group guidelines. We use the same guidelines that our adult small groups use. There are some caveats which you're going to learn about next week, but don't be afraid to police the guidelines. We have them for a reason, right? So whenever students start cross-talking, hey guys, remember no crosstalk. Whenever a student in your group is sharing and dominating the entire group, they're like, what? We don't do that. It never happens, right? Especially not in those girls groups. But when someone is oversharing, it's okay to say, thank you so much for sharing. Can we give space for some of the other students to share? Policing the guidelines creates safety and space in your group. So don't be afraid to police the guidelines. It creates a safe environment. So just questions. How are you doing at some of these specifics in shepherding? When you have a first-time guest come to your group, what are some of the things that you do? What can you do?
Make them feel comfortable.
Make them feel comfortable. How would you make them feel comfortable?
You can like connect them to like other students in the group already. So
Yeah.
see if they go to the same school or something, or maybe like some of the same stuff.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, introduce them to the other students in the group. Get them connected, absolutely.
You win. Go.
I was gonna say, just with that, like I always, if there's ever a new girl, I have everyone go around and say their name and like have an icebreaker. That way they can at least feel comfortable knowing that everyone knows their name and they know everybody else's name.
That's good. Yeah.
Like before group, get them involved in the game or something.
Mm-hmm. Before group, get them involved in the game. Absolutely. Yeah. When you have a first-time guest, there's also some follow-up that you can do, not just when they're in the group, but after the group. Anytime you have a first-time guest come to your group, this is high school specific. At junior high, they will, because it's Sunday morning, they will fill out the first-time guest card, so we'll have that information. High school, you're in homes, your host homes will have the first-time guest cards. Please fill out those cards. Please fill out those cards, because it gives us information like their phone number, like their address, like their parents' information. That way, at the end of the night, you can actually shoot them a quick text. Hey, thank you so much for being at group tonight. We loved having you here. Hope you can come back. Just a welcome text, or write them a card or a postcard. Hey, loved having you at group the other night. It was awesome. Floyd can attest to this. Y'all, after every mix, after all of our big Wednesday nights, any new student card that we get, we text and say, hey, thanks for coming. Y'all, they reply back. They do. We have full-blown conversations with these kids who were so excited that they were there. So those text messages, they connect to you and they work. When a member misses your group, what do? When you notice, or do you notice when someone hasn't been to your group in a couple weeks? What do you do? What can you do?
Follow up, reach out.
Follow up, reach out. You can connect with their parents. You can give them a call. You can send them a text message. Check in. Hey, we miss you. Where you been? You can say, hey, I haven't seen you in a while. Would love to grab coffee with you. Would love to go grab Sonic happy hour. Something, right?
And I think COVID has given us an out not to do this, and so there's gonna take some intentionality in doing this, because that's actually what I put, we need to be better about reaching out, like both of us, and I think COVID's given us an out, so just maybe putting that back on the forefront of our mind.
Yeah.
That there's gonna take some intentionality on small group leaders to say, oh, I need to reach out whether we're in a pandemic or not.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, that's good. That's really good. Now, what are a few ways you can meet the group's parents? How do you connect with their parents?
Y'all brought up about going to games and stuff is a real good one.
Yeah, go to games, go to the recitals.
I feel like if I can catch them, I will catch them and be like, I'm so-and-so small group leader. And they're like, okay. But I think trying to, even do that awkward at church. It's middle school.
They
Yeah.
still, parents are still coming
Yes.
to pick up sometimes.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah.
And even when I recognize the parent not with their kid, I will even say, hey, how is so-and-so doing?
Yeah.
And so just, those conversations really honestly make me uncomfortable.
Yeah.
And so, since they make me feel so
Yeah.
uncomfortable, I want to
Yeah.
avoid them, and so that's where I get stretched. is
Yeah.
those things.
Yeah, I think it's, in junior high, you're actually gonna do a lot of ministry with families and with parents, because if you do want to do any kind of hangout things, you're typically coordinating with parents, right? And high school it becomes a little bit more dependent on, like, you are really connected more with the student specifically. Surprising the parents with your care and introducing yourself to them, like Amanda was saying, it goes a really long way. It could really catch parents off guard, like, whoa, okay, cool, because maybe they're not used to someone caring about their kid so much. But when they do run into hard times, if they do run into hard times with their student, now they know they've got an ally, someone who knows their student, who can say the same thing that they would say, but speak with a different voice. And it may hit their student, it may hit their child a little bit different, where their child is going to be more apt to listening to you than listening to their parent. You have a really special seat in that kid's life.
Could you provide the parents' names and emails and phone numbers?
Absolutely.
Also?
Absolutely.
Especially
Yes.
for middle school, because we'll
Yes.
be able to connect with them rather than.
Yeah, absolutely. I can definitely do that for you guys. Yeah, so one of the ways that shepherds count their sheep, right? They know how many sheep they have, they know if they're missing sheep, they know all of that stuff. One of the ways that we as shepherds count our sheep is taking attendance. Y'all, oh my goodness, she's talking about it again. Y'all, we take attendance. It has become a lot easier over the years through the use of our Met app. That's right, y'all. The Met Church has an app. If it's not on your phone, make sure that you download it from your app store. But get the app, because it actually makes taking attendance super, super easy. This 2-page document has your step-by-step instructions on how to take attendance in your group, where to find group attendance in your app, how to log in, how to do all the things. Y'all, there's even, if you don't like apps on your phone, you still got that Razor flip phone from 2001. There are actual instructions on how to log in to your group from a web browser as well. So from the app, from a web browser. Taking attendance. I'm gonna just clear the air on this. Yes, every time a student walks into one of our events, we have them check in. So junior high, your students will check in on a Sunday morning. High school, your students, when they show up to the house on Wednesday night, They won't check in because we don't have a computer there running our check-in system. Every time there's the mix on a Wednesday night, yes, your students will check in. Our check-in system gives us the opportunity to run reports to say who was there, who was not there, to help us see. We had 110 kids here who checked in. My head count was 115. What's the gap? Like, where are we losing kids to check in, right? So it helps us monitor our numbers and see how accurate we're getting. Check-in system. Also, guys, I learned this a couple years ago. If for any reason there was an emergency where we would have to evacuate the building, we are able to, because of the way our database works with being in the cloud, all the things, we are able to immediately run reports, to do head counts, and to have names, so that if we were ever have to evacuate the building, we would be able to then know which students were with us and if any were missing. So it is a security protocol for us to do check-in. That check-in is not taking attendance for your specific group. Our check-in doesn't help you shepherd well. You have the ability within the app or within your in-fellowship account, you have the ability to go in and take attendance. When you take attendance for all of your group members, you also have the ability to add students to your group or to invite students to your group. So if you've got someone who's visited 2 or 3 consecutive weeks, go ahead and count them in as a part of your group. You can add them to your group roster. You also have access to their phone numbers, their addresses, their email addresses, all of their contact information. So it is your group's database right at your fingertips. So use it, take attendance. What you can do is as you take attendance, hey, I haven't seen so-and-so in a while. When did they last attend? Y'all, you can pull up your previous and past attendances to recognize who's been here, who hasn't, how long it's been. So it helps you know where your students are or where they're not. So take attendance. Wednesday nights, high school groups, take attendance. Yes, I will text you every Wednesday night and ask for a head count. Absolutely will do that. What that does is helps me say, here's my head count, who's not taking attendance, right? Y'all's attendance is our check-in.
Can I ask, usually it doesn't allow or open up while we're in our small group. And I feel like, maybe it's the teacher in me, that it's so much easier to take attendance when we're actually physically sitting there.
Absolutely.
Is there any way to bump it up?
Yes.
Before?
Okay. Yes, there is, and we can do that. I believe we actually were able to do that with our high school groups in homes, and it worked out pretty well. They were able to take attendance that night. So we will make that change for junior high. That is something that we can absolutely do. Okay, that was attendance. That was like my logistics thing that I had to cover. Okay, yes, you add a new student to your group when they've attended 2 or 3 consecutive times. One of the things I want to touch really fast is the branching rule. It's important, and it's up here on your 4 keys in your shepherding rules. Branching is really, really important, but we branch differently than our adult groups. The interesting thing is that high numbers are actually a really good thing for students, right? Y'all know, there's a difference between having like 10 kids in a room versus 4. Y'all know, the energy is totally different. So that's why with our high school homes, we've chosen to do guys and girls in one home. Why? More students, energy is up. You branch off between guys and girls for the actual discussion piece, right? So numbers, high numbers are actually really engaging and energizing for our student groups. They're good. However, they're not always good for conversation, right? A student may hold back quite a bit in a group of 12 but man, would they open up and talk about something real big with a group of 5 or 6. So we branch a little bit differently with our student ministry. If your number is consistently between 12 to 14, week after week after week, what we do when we start noticing that trend is we say, hey, this week, why don't you and your co-leader share the story together, like do the history, share the story together, and then when you get ready to discuss, you take half the group, I'll take half the group, and we're actually gonna branch for just the discussion piece. That way every student can be engaged and involved. So share the story, do the history, do the icebreaker, all of that together, but then branch for the actual discussion. If you notice that it is week after week after week, your numbers are consistently building, consistently growing, you're branching, offer the conversations, the groups are still getting bigger, that is awesome. So the first thing we're gonna do is we're gonna celebrate that. But we're also going to help navigate what it looks like to actually branch your group. It's not a sad thing. It is an incredible thing. It is something that we celebrate. So we cast vision for your students and we help them understand taking this next step, why it's such a big deal. We celebrate the accomplishment that this is. But as we work through an actual branching of the group, we don't let you go alone. We help you navigate finding a co-leader so that you can go with someone into this branch so that you're not doing things alone. As you officially branch a group into 2, one of the things that we do want to always recommend is there's still a lot of relationship between the 2 groups. So when you plan to do fun things outside of church, like you're gonna go grab lunch on a Sunday after church, or you're gonna have a sleepover, a paint party, anything. I'm like, listen to all the fun girl stuff. Go play paintball, any of those types of things. And like get with that other group and do those things together as one. That way relationship can still be there and still be fruitful. Whew, okay, that was branching. Okay guys, 5 minutes to talk about conflict. Who's ready? Can someone look up Matthew 18 verses 15 through 18? Matthew 18 verses 15 through 18.
I have it.
And then, so Jody, I'm gonna have you read that in a second. And then someone else look up for me Ephesians chapter 4, verses 25 through 32. Ephesians 4, 25 through 32.
Good.
All right, Jody, if you'll read, and then Chase, if you'll read.
If another believer sins against you, go privately and point out the offense. If the other person listens and confesses it, you have won that person back. But if you are unsuccessful, take 1 or 2 others with you and go back again, so that everything you say may be confirmed by 2 or 3 witnesses. If the person still refuses to listen, take your case to the church. Then if he or she won't accept the church's decision, treat that person as a pagan or a corrupt tax collector. I tell you the truth, whatever you forbid on earth will be forbidden in heaven, and whatever you permit on earth will be permitted in heaven.
All right, Chase.
Stop telling lies. Let us tell our neighbors the truth, for we are all parts of the same body. And do not sin by letting anger control you. Do not let the sun go down while you are still angry, for anger gives a foothold to the devil. If you are a thief, quit stealing. Instead, use your hands for good hard work, and then give generously to others in need. Do not use foul or abusive language. Let everything you say be good and helpful, so that your words will be an encouragement to those who hear them. And do not bring sorrow to God's Holy Spirit by the way you live. Remember, He has identified you as His own, guaranteeing that you will be saved on the day of redemption. Get rid of all bitterness, rage, anger, harsh words, and slander, as well as all types of evil behavior. Instead, be kind to each other, tender-hearted, forgiving one another, just as God, through Christ, has forgiven you.
Thank you, guys. There are a lot of things that can create conflict in a group. From those passages, I hear a lot of it's our attitude, it's what we say. So there can, what are some examples of relational tension or conflict that could arise in your student small group?
Girls feeling left out.
Girls feeling left out. Boys, y'all deal with that too? I don't. Us ladies do. A little bit. Yeah. Girls arguing over boys. Guys arguing over girls. Wow. This is like an episode of Bachelor.
Sometimes they bring in the conflict that's happening in the schools. It might not even be what's happening in the church or in the
Yeah.
group. But we had cases where it was brought in from the school.
From the school, yeah. Yeah, what they're dealing with outside.
I feel like miscommunication is a big one too. It's like one person says something and they don't intentionally mean it a certain way, and the other girl gets real upset. She's like, "You were so mean to me." And it's like, I didn't mean it that way, but
Yeah. Yeah, sometimes people say things, and I notice it a lot with our students where it's like, you said that? What? Oh, ooh. You should rephrase, you know? I used to get in trouble for that as I was growing up. My mom always said, like, Allison, it's not what you say, it's how you say it. And how you say it cuts like a knife. So, and I was like, ooh, sorry, Mom. What are some other conflicts that may arise in group?
Sibling conflict?
Ooh, that's a
Also
good
within
one.
home, like home conflict?
Yep, sibling, home conflict.
We have conflict sometimes just because somebody wants to stir the pot. They want the conflict. They want to see reaction.
Yeah.
Right? They want to.
Yeah.
They want some shock value.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes.
Yeah. Conflict can be all over the board, especially with our students, right? Some days are really awesome, and then the next day you're like, who even are you? Like, are you? What happened overnight, right? But that's teenagers. That is teenagers. So we want to make sure that we're able to navigate conflict graciously. But what are some key factors in facing the conflict in your group? What are key factors in facing relational tension within your group?
I think you have to ask them to step back and see the value of the other person.
Yeah.
Like, is what you're mad about worth your friendship with that person?
Yeah.
Your relationship with that person?
Mhm.
Like, sometimes you just need to let it go.
Yeah, you need to have a realistic view of the problem and people.
What expectations you have of that other person?
Yeah.
Would you expect that from yourself?
Yeah.
Like, there's value there.
Yeah, absolutely. Realistic expectation of the other person. And would you hold yourself to that same standard? Having two willing people. One person may be really willing to resolve a conflict while the other person may not be so willing.
I think coaching them too,
Mhm.
like, not only is there value, but coaching them on their outs. Like,
Yeah.
hey, you can come back even if you thought you'd taken it this way.
Mhm.
Coaching and resourcing them on like, hey, how can you actually play this out?
Yeah.
The scenario on
Yeah.
both sides.
That's good.
Because I think sometimes they get it
Mhm.
and they don't.
Yeah, well, and remember, right now, developmentally, our students, their brains can only see and process the world that they are experiencing, what is right in front of them. They don't, everything to them is such a big deal because this is it. Like they actually, like, due to brain development, cannot see and notice, hey, in 5 years, this is not even gonna matter. This is not even a big deal. Life will move on. This is another drop in the bucket. But developmentally, their brains are not there yet to see a future perspective. So keep that in mind as you're walking through conflict with these students. You have on here, you have 9 guidelines for walking through conflict with a student. So I just want to go through those, and then we're going to spend a couple minutes praying. I'm over time, I'm really sorry. But we're going to spend a couple minutes just praying for our students with your co-leaders. But the very first guideline is that leaders are responsible for the process, not the outcome. Remember that as you give wise counsel, as you guide the process, you can hold the people accountable through the process, right? But in the end, whether or not the conflict is actually resolved, whether or not there is forgiveness extended, that is on the students. You can only do your part. You're responsible for guiding the process. You are not responsible for the actual outcome. The second one is the conflict need not be resolved in one meeting. I loved this and how it says, hey guys, this is not an episode of a TV show where there was a conflict and it was resolved all in that 45 minutes to an hour of a show. This takes time to process, and sometimes this process can be slow. So do not rush the outcome. Conflict must be processed with trust and confidentiality. There's massive potential for additional wounding if confidentiality is not held tight. These students trust your word. So don't discuss this matter with people outside of group unless it's truly someone from whom you're seeking wisdom and insight. Prepare your heart is the next one. Recommend that there's a time of prayer and solitude, often a half day or a whole day. Encourage your students to unplug and to set aside time to pray and be in scripture, to ask guidance from the Lord on what they need to say, what feelings are true and what are not. And that will help process the conflict. The fifth one is start soon. Some of us in this room, we will take conflict head on, just get it over with, like, right? Just run through the storm. And there are others of us that run away from the storm. I'm a little bit more of a runawayer, but I'm learning how to confront, right? Start soon, don't let anything fester. The sixth one is meet face to face. There's a difference between 2D and 3D conversations. A 2D conversation doesn't involve emotion, it doesn't involve feelings. A 3D conversation is something that involves emotions or feelings, and that means it's a 3D conversation. You need to have it in person. Don't rely on text or email, or I would even say sometimes phone call for those conversations to happen, because a lot can be misunderstood and misinterpreted. So when it comes to dealing with conflict, have those conversations in person. The seventh one is keep it simple. If the conflict is between two group members, then we need to step into the conflict like Matthew 18 teaches us to. Those two people need to begin with a conversation to resolve the conflict. And if they cannot resolve the conflict, then allow them to invite maybe you as a small group leader into helping navigate what next steps to take, right? The goal is to restore a broken relationship and to help a person grow. So using that biblical model of Matthew 18 is really important. And then the ninth one is get the facts. Get the facts. Emotions and feelings, they can tell us a lot, and a lot of what they tell us isn't true. So listen to both sides, understand both sides, and then help them navigate to what is true and what is false. And don't let feelings and emotions rule the conflict. So now we've talked about conflict. You should all have your rosters. On these rosters, what I would love for you guys, yes ma'am, do you need a roster? Yeah. Yeah.
Triangles. When they try to bring someone else in and to do the job for them, I have to encounter that when my pre-teen and say, no, you need to tell her to go to her directly and not tell you to be the middle person.
It's good.
So that's something that I've been noticing at this age that I've been trying to address. There's a little bit more of like a herd mentality with their students, right? They need people to be on their side and to back them up and to validate their feelings. And that is something that we have to help them be aware of. It's like, hey, sometimes that actually fuels a fire that needs sand thrown on it. Information has power, and it can heal relationships, but it can also destroy relationship. And so as we approach biblically, right? Hey, no, y'all, like, you too need to have this conversation. And then if a third person needs to be brought in, then it needs to be someone maybe older, wiser, who can help maturely navigate what you guys are experiencing. Maybe not your peer group, not your ally, but an outside party. And that's really, really important. So I love that you have already begun to work with students on, no, take yourself out of it. They've got to have the conversation together.
Over the next year where we did something similar to this?